George Floyd is laid to rest. We talk with Temple University professor and host of BET News, Marc Lamont Hill, about the prevailing cancel culture.
I wish that these companies were doing it because, you know, they have ethics or morals. They're doing it because being racist right now, or seeming racist, is bad for business.
We take a closer look at violence with Dr. Wilfred Reilly.
So the argument of at least the hardcore of the Black Lives Matter movement, to some extent, is that police are more of a threat than a benefit. That's just not true.
Acting Deputy Secretary for Homeland Security, Ken Cuccinelli, is also here. And we get the hot take on the major upswing in the economy from former economic advisor to President Obama and economics professor at the University of Chicago, Austan Goolsbee. That and so much more.
Well, you know, first of all, I empathize with you. No one has it harder than America, than privileged white men. But, you know,
you had to come out there. You had to go there. Right now in America This Week. Welcome to America This Week. I'm Eric Bolling. We continue to grow as the hottest new political show broadcast across the country. Despite a pandemic and a nation gripped by civil unrest, I will always keep my promise to you to hold the powerful accountable and bring to light the issues the mainstream media just will not. What a year it's been, folks. Is it the weirdest year ever, or is it just my imagination? I mean, if someone asked you way back in 2019 what the heck this was, I don't think there's a person living today who could accurately describe that picture right there. You know what? 2020 has seen a ton of things no one could have predicted just a few months ago. Like this, Governor Cuomo getting a COVID-19 nasal swab treatment. Or this guy ranting about people wanting to take away his mask only to be told a harsh truth. Watch his reaction. It's priceless.
Why do we need masks? What are you hiding from? Divine mercy. What are you hiding from? Coronavirus. It's a joke.
You don't have a mask on. You know that, right?
As you're speaking with no mask. This is my air horn. It's on your neck, dude. I sanitize it when I get home. Yo, good.
We're less than halfway through 2020, and it's been a year for the record books already. Check it out. We started the year with a win. The world's most feared terrorist was eliminated. General Soleimani got his butt droned in January. Now, that was a good thing. But then stuff started getting weird. House Democrats tried to impeach President Trump, but the Senate, held by Republicans, as predicted, acquitted him. One of the greatest athletes of all time, Kobe Bryant, who once scored 81 points in a single NBA game, lost his life alongside his beloved daughter, Gianna, in a helicopter crash one early morning in Los Angeles. A Ukrainian jet crashed, killing all 176 passengers. There was a volcano in the Philippines, an earthquake in Thailand, wildfires in Australia, and locusts in East Africa. Royals were roiled when Prince Harry announced he and wife Meghan Markle were leaving the motherland for Hollywood about the same time the UK Brexited the European Union. Then came COVID-19 and travel bans and shelter-in-place orders. And for the first time ever, and hopefully the last time, the American economy was completely shut down. Pop-up hospitals popped up in central parks across America. 18-wheelers were repurposed as morgues. This stuff is just strange and getting stranger. Olympics were canceled, but the elections still on. Movie releases were postponed, clearing the path for Joe Exotic, the Tiger King, to become king of all media. Elon Musk failed at glass, and then Elon Musk succeeded at space. Kim Jong-un was declared dead, then mysteriously resurrected. I guess we could say he became undead. Murder hornets happened. Let me say that again. Murder hornets. Yep, a weird year indeed. But it turns out things were just getting started for 2020. George Floyd was murdered by a cop while the whole world watched via Facebook. People turned out en masse to protest. Americans locked arms demanding police reform. The rest of the world joined the protests from England to Italy. Unfortunately, so did the agitator groups. Antifa and other agitators disguised their faces to blend in with the protesters and ravaged Main Street America. Rioting, looting, and violence filled our streets and our TV screens. Mayhem ensued. America was burning, and still is. Some year it's been. Just to add insult to injury, 2020 is a leap year. So that, yeah, that extra day, thanks a lot. I'm just not sure what could possibly be in store for the rest of this year. And so with half a year to go, there's no telling what we're going to be exposed to. Now, speaking of exposed, hopefully we're less exposed to Chris Fredo Cuomo's backside. I mean, really butt naked outside your house? That stage photo op was way too much for most of us. So thanks again, 2020, for testing all of our limits. And thanks again, Mrs. Cuomo. I'll never be able to unsee that. Dr. Wilfred Reilly is an associate professor of political science at Kentucky State University and just released a new book, Taboo, 10 Facts You Can't Talk About. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Reilly. You know, I want to go into this. We're talking about defunding police departments across the country. I go back to Chicago last weekend. 19 people killed in Chicago, the bloodiest week in that city, my hometown's history, as long as they've been keeping records, maybe in all time, at least 60 years. How do we defund a police department with so much violence still happening on our streets?
I think the idea of defunding police departments is insane. I mean, as I've said in a number of other venues, obviously everyone opposes police brutality. Everyone opposes the minority of dirty cops. I was very glad to see the officers involved in the George Floyd killing. I mean, all 4 of those guys have been fired. They're all facing charges. And I will note at least the first of those steps happened before the riots, which didn't necessarily make any sense. But when you look broadly at what happens when you remove police from those diverse, high-density urban environments, we've seen this before, actually. I mean, following the Michael Brown riots in Ferguson in 2014, we saw substantial police pullback. I mean, in our home city, there was that famous newspaper headline, police stops down 90%, crime just skyrockets. And that was a national phenomenon. Director Comey labeled it the Ferguson effect. We've all heard that term. But from 2014 to 2017, we saw murders skyrocket from a baseline of about 14,000 to 17,294, if I have that correct. And the effects of that were concentrated in poor, often Black, although working class white and Hispanic as well, communities. Black murders by the end of that period were at nearly 8,000 per year. So there were more African-American murders, and this had not always been the case, than there were murders among whites and Hispanics combined. So again, we all want to, and this, by the way, the same thing happened. We saw a pullback of policing following Escobedo, following Fruit of the Poisonous Tree. As far back as the 1960s, crime increased 500% between the 1960s and 1994. So in one sentence, get dirty cops off the street, but nobody wants to remove police departments. I can't think of a single instance where that successfully happened.
You know, I'd like to point out 21 shot in St. Louis in the past week, 7 shot in 10 minutes in Brooklyn, New York. In Los Angeles, this is important, Doctor. We have about a minute or so. Weigh in on this. In Los Angeles, homicide rate rose 250% recently. Is this any time to be canceling cops?
No, and this gets into what the real danger is. So the argument of at least the hardcore of the Black Lives Matter movement to some extent is that police are more of a threat than a benefit. That's just not true. If you look at the total number of unarmed Black men killed by LEOs, law enforcement officers last year, that's between 9 and 15. On the other hand, 17 to 18,000 people are murdered every year. You mentioned that in one day in Chicago, 19 people were shot, bloodiest day in 60 years. So if to eliminate the first problem, those 9 to 15 guys, we all mourn those tragedies, you do something that's going to cause 4,000 or 5,000 killings, that is a disaster. That's not something to consider.
We're going to leave it there. Dr. Wilfred Reilly, we really appreciate your time. There's so many topics to get into. When we come next time we have you on, we'll dig a little bit deeper into defund the police and canceling cops. Dr. Wilfred Reilly, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're pleased to welcome back Temple University professor and host of BET News, Marc Lamont Hill. Marc, let's start with some of these things that are bubbling up in the news lately. The cancel culture. There's been a Pittsburgh Gazette editor who's been fired or let go. Condé Nast executive, Bon Appetit editor, New York Times op-ed editor. These people are leaving Bravo. There are 4 Bravo stars that were fired from their jobs over tweets. It seems harsh punishment. Am I wrong, or do they deserve these fates?
You know, I believe in the First Amendment. I believe in free speech, whether it's the right to speak what you believe, whether it's the right to organize or protest. I believe that everyone has that right. I think the way markets work is that companies have a right to say, hey, our audience doesn't want to see this. This is bad for business. I wish that these companies were doing it because, you know, they have ethics or morals. They're doing it because being racist right now or seeming racist is bad for business. And so, you know, in the age of Black Lives Matter, companies are letting people go who may not have done so even a month ago or certainly not a year ago. So ultimately, the market's prevailing here, whether I like it or not.
And true, and I agree with you. And markets always prevail. I've always been, for the record, for 15, 18 years I've been on television, I'm against the boycott culture. It's just, it seems like overly aggressive. You can make your point, you can get people aware, but ruining people's lives over a comment, over a tweet seems harsh. Again, I'm not defending any of these people. They need, the world needs to change. I get that. But I feel as a white male on television, I really have to measure every single word coming out of my mouth. I don't like it, Marc. I just don't like to have to worry that I know I'm not racist, but I'm afraid that someone might interpret something I say or tweet as being racist, even if it's not. I mean,
I got to say, you know,
Black Lives Matter. Is there no version of that, including someone else, that it's okay to even utter on television or tweet about?
Well, you know, first of all, I empathize with you. No one has it harder than America. Than privileged white men. But, you know,
you had to come out there. You had to go there, but go ahead. I have a problem with your privileged part of that. I'm definitely a white male. The privileged part, maybe now, but certainly not growing up. But go ahead. I apologize. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I'm talking about now. But the bigger point here, I think, is the question of, is there room for us to disagree? Is there room for us to have different worldviews and they not be us not getting beaten up over it? Absolutely. But it's also okay for someone to say, I don't want certain kinds of people working for me. I don't want to, for example, I own a cafe in Philadelphia. I would not want to employ someone who was a white supremacist or someone who was transphobic. Do they have a right to their opinion? Sure. But I have a right to say, I don't want my company, my brand associated with them. And so I think we have to also be mindful of that. And so I don't want to get into this kind of framework of, you know, we can't say anything anymore. We're not allowed to be racist anymore. I'm not talking about you, but I'm talking about people who are actually saying things that are racist. There has to be room for accountability. Again, I'm not denying free speech. I'm simply saying that companies have a right to also hold people accountable for that speech.
100% free markets. I got that. Last week, one of the, you know, we have this call-in thing. I have this call-in thing. Very quickly, I'll just tell you a story. You and I had a little bit of a heated discussion on what the difference between resistance and rioting and why they were different. I thought they were different. You said some of them have some of the similar characteristics. I got kind of heated up, and someone pointed out, African-American called me and said, you see how you felt about that? You see how it bubbled up inside of you? And he said, that's what we've been feeling as blacks in America our whole lives. That same amount of emotion that you had, that's what that black people are coming from. And it was really an enlightening moment for me, because I was mad at you, Marc, for putting rioters in the same group as resistors. And now I get it. I get it a little bit more. I'm relaying an anecdotal moment. Just final thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that it takes all of us a moment of clarity or a moment of intervention from someone else to understand another person's perspective. And to be black in this country, to be poor in this country, to be queer or trans in this country, is to catch hell constantly. And at this particular moment, we're seeing exactly how tough it is. And like you said, that pain, that anger, even trauma from years and years of institutional pressure is why we're saying, you know, Black Lives Matter, but we have to resist in ways that affirm our lives. And peaceful protest always isn't the way that people are going to do it. Next time I come, I want to talk about defunding police, because that's another piece of why we're so damn mad.
Well, we'll have you on next week. I'll book you right now for next week. Marc Lamont Hill, everybody. Thank you for your time.
Pleasure.
Let's go now to the acting Deputy Secretary for Homeland Security, Ken Cuccinelli. Let's also explain to the audience, we tried to do Skype, it kind of fell apart. We're now doing this as phoner. Secretary, thank you for joining us. As a former Attorney General, talk to us a little bit about what we really should expect with police departments coming under such pressure by people and mayors to defund them. I guess we don't really mean defund them, but giving them such a hard time. What should we expect? What do you think will happen?
Well, we've seen this. This is similar to cities where they tell police departments to give the rioters room. Remember in Baltimore, when the hair trigger reaction, like in the St. Louis area, was attacking the police after the Ferguson situation, and the police drew back. I mean, they were less protective in any sort of aggressive fashion of the population they were tasked with protecting. And it is the communities that need policing the most that will be hurt the most. Make no mistake about it.
Do you think the cities that we've seen on television over the last 12 or 15 days or so, do you think they handled the protesters, and I'll add in there some of the Antifa rioters as well, did they handle it properly?
Well, some did and some didn't. And what you saw, Eric, was that where people responsibly advanced additional law enforcement support, violence receded. And where they didn't do that, violence continued. Look at Minneapolis itself, where this all began. They held back early on, and they had tons of violence. And when they finally moved in the National Guard and so forth and additional support, well, guess what? The violence subsided. This isn't a desire by law enforcement to be confrontational. It is a desire by law enforcement to achieve its mission of peace on the streets. And sometimes when bad people are misbehaving and victimizing good people, that means you have to use more force, meaning a larger number of officers. They have to address crowds head on to stop the looting, to stop the fires, to stop the violence. And if you hold them back, all you do is make room for the violence and the stealing.
Weigh in on this, because I remember I spent 20 years in New York City. Cops were very concerned about that split-second difference between, what I'm about to do. I'm trying to stop this violence, or I'm trying to stop a perp. If I just delay that action on as a cop, I'm putting myself at risk and the community at risk. Are we making communities less safe because cops have to think twice? They have to blink for a second to think what their action is when they use any sort of force.
Yeah, and you can call it a trade-off, Eric. I mean, if we want to make them spend more time thinking about an action, then there are going to be instances where more harm is done, including killing, before they engage, whereas before we would let them react based on their training and their knowledge and their experience. And will they make mistakes? They're human beings. We all make mistakes, and they're going to as well. And we'll never eliminate mistakes. However, when you have the kind of delay you just described, Eric, you also get more harm. And to your point, it often puts officers in a position where they have a harder time keeping themselves safe. And you can't help other people stay safe if you can't keep yourself safe. The first rule of first aid.
All right, we're going to leave right there. Acting Deputy Secretary for Homeland Security, Ken Cuccinelli. Don't forget, former Attorney General of Virginia. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Eric. Good to be with you.
Well, this has been quite a week for the president. Joining me now is senior Trump campaign advisor and former White House Director of Strategic Communications, Mercedes Schlapp. Mercy, thank you for being here. I want to get this clear some air on some of this stuff. There's been a poll that CNN put up, and the president was very upset with the poll. He hired a pollster and dug into it. Now, this is near and dear to my heart. I'm all a numbers guy. Mercy, I remember in 2016, these polls were skewed. One of your pollsters found that there were only 25% of respondents in this poll identified as Republicans. So you went so far as to what? You're suing CNN?
That's right. I mean, I think the campaign had to take action in suing CNN. This is the problem. They keep putting out these poll numbers without really being representative of the the right type of voters, right, of who is likely to vote, the registered voters. And so I think it's very problematic for these different polls. It's why we had our pollsters look into it. And look, I'll tell you, Eric, you know, you look at the internal polls and, you know, we're confident, we're strong that once Americans learn about Biden, that you'll see President Trump continue to rise in the polls. It's when we're up against a defined Biden that the president is strong. And what we know so far is that Joe Biden has been hiding in the basement for a very, very long time.
Yeah, Mercy, I'll go back to 2016 again, and people told me you're out of your mind, Bolling. I said, stop looking at the polls, look at the people. There was so much enthusiasm, and you look at the MAGA events then, I guess you're going to start them again. Now, here's my question, though. Those national polls were absolutely horrible. They had Hillary Clinton winning by massive numbers going into the election. The state polls mattered. They were actually a lot more clear and more accurate than the national polls. How are you doing state to state, swing state, battleground states? Give me an assessment.
Well, like you said, Eric, I mean, the enthusiasm is great for President Trump. And obviously, we've seen approval ratings for the president, especially amongst Republicans, at such high levels. You know, you have to remember that when we were doing rallies, and now we're going to be going back to rallies, you know, we were always so intrigued by the number of Democrats who would attend the rallies. You would see about 25% of the rally goers were Democrats or more. And the same thing with independents. So the reality is look, we still have over 5 months to go. Americans still have to learn about Joe Biden's record, despite the fact that he's been a career politician for over 40 years. And I think the more they learn about Joe Biden's weak leadership and his coziness with China and his economic policies that would be destructive to America, right, the more the American people are going to say, wait a second here, we've got a strong leader, right, under President Trump who is focused on ensuring that we rebuild the economy. And we saw that just last week with the great economic numbers.
Marcy, I just have about a minute or so. Very quickly, I wanted to do them individually, but 3 states that are must-win states for the president, obviously. Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania. Give me about 30 seconds. Where does he stand on those 3 states?
Look, again, I think our internal polls show that he's in a strong position when we have a well-defined Joe Biden. I think that the president, again, the enthusiasm is there in those states. Our ground game is like no other. This is the most sophisticated, organized campaign that I've ever even worked on, and I've worked on several campaigns. So I have to say we are in a very strong position going into the summer and into the fall. And as you know, these poll numbers right now, they don't mean too much. At the end of the day, if we would have believed the 2016 polls, like you said, Hillary Clinton would have been president. That's not the case. Right. I think you're going to see a groundswell for the president, and the president, of course, be reelected in November.
Gotcha. Mercedes Schlapp, Senior Trump Campaign Advisor. Appreciate your time. Ahead on America This Week, the economy keeps getting better and better, and more Americans are back to work. We break it all down with President Obama's former economic advisor, Austan Goolsbee. And a little later, get ready for some major developments in General Michael Flynn's case. His attorney, Sidney Powell, lays out her arguments. You definitely don't want to miss this.
America, one nation, from Florida to St. Louis to Seattle. America This Week, America's fastest growing political show, delivers facts, not falsehoods.
Well, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I appreciate the opportunity to clear some of it up.
Hard-edged opinions.
We can no longer rely on China to be the primary producer of so many critical products that we need in a time of crisis.
Tough topic debates.
Has the mainstream media vetted Joe Biden the way they vetted others on the right?
I just believe that all women have the right to speak their truth and that those truths should also be investigated. The end, regardless of what political party they are a part of.
America This Week reveals the topics and issues that pulse throughout America. Fighting COVID-19.
We're working with every single state to be able to detect outbreaks before they spread into the community.
And the path forward.
Getting back to some degree of normality, that will come. We will get over this.
America This Week investigates chaos at the southern border.
Go, 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 go.
The poisoning of America.
It's in the soils, it's in the water, and it's in our blood.
Toxic chemicals linked to multiple cancers found in towns across America.
We were poisoned, and we are still poisoned.
Almost every day, there is a new community that is finding out that their water is contaminated.
America This Week relentlessly seeks the truth on your behalf.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America This Week. Well, let's get right to the interview segment. Former economic advisor to President Obama and economics professor at the University of Chicago, Austan Goolsbee, friend of mine, full disclosure, friend of mine as well. Austan, thanks for being here. Boy, we brought you on. You know, I just thought you'd just be so amazed. The economy, 2.5 million new jobs created, unemployment rate dropping to a whopping 13.3% when they expected almost 20%. Tell me about this Trump economy popping on all cylinders, huh?
Well, Pop, I was happy to see that we got that good jobs number. That was excellent. I mean, I don't think you want to trumpet it too much when we lost 21 million jobs the month before. So, I mean, it quite is like giving up 21 runs in the first inning, and then you scored 3 in the second inning. That's a good inning, but you're going to have a lot of innings like that to even get back to where you were.
Can you not give this guy credit? Everyone expected almost a 19.5% unemployment rate. We got 13. This is after a coronavirus wiped out the job market.
No, that's what I said. I was very pleased.
But hold on. Allow me to finish. Here's my big question, Austan. Is it still Obama's economy or not? Because when we lost 21 million jobs, no one wanted to touch the economy. Now they're all back. Is it back to Obama's economy? Yes or no?
Well, no, I think you want to be a little careful not to be out of touch here, Eric. I mean, the unemployment rate is over 13%. And the argument that they expected it to be even worse, I think is true. That's why it was a good day Friday. I was very pleased with that jobs number. But we've still got the highest unemployment rate that we've had since the Depression. So let's be a little mindful of what's got to be done here.
Yeah, no doubt. Again, let's talk about the NASDAQ. I mean, look, you're an economics professor. There are certain indicators, there are economic indicators that tell us the health of the economy. One is a jobs number. A substantially better than expected jobs number is one way to take the temperature. You know, COVID-19, we've got to see what our temperature is. We're taking the temperature of the economy. One of the symptoms would be a fever. It looks like it's a lot better temperature than we thought that was. Another one is clearly the equities markets. The NASDAQ this week made an all-time high, the highest it's ever been, even including prior to COVID-19. The Dow recovered all of its losses during the COVID-19 sell-off. I mean, take it as a whole, Austan. You got to be thinking this is better than most of us thought it was going to be.
Well, I think it's better than we feared that it was going to be. Yes, that's the good part. I don't understand your argument that we should be bragging about how good it is when we've got the highest unemployment rate since the Depression and we're literally in the deepest recession in our lifetimes.
Here's my sincere argument. Okay. You're my good friend. We've done this TV thing for a better part of a decade. You're my good friend. Here's my argument. When things were going great for Trump, when the things that he put in, lower taxes, reduced regulations, the economy started to turn around, and everyone of your group, you work for President Obama, you were a senior economic advisor to Obama, you guys are taking victory lap on Trump's economy, saying, no, this is Obama's economy. The bottom falls out of the damn thing, and you guys are nowhere to be found. All of a sudden, you guys threw it back to Trump. Oh, you know, I don't know, this is not our problem anymore. We did our thing in 2009 to 2016. Now things are back. Are the Obama economy people going to start chiming in again saying, still our economy?
You, Eric, as you know, we're friends. You invented that whole thing in your head. None of the Obama people said that. And we are not back. Okay. The economy is not back. The unemployment rate is 13%. We let in 21 runs in the first inning. It's great we had a good jobs number of a little over 2.5 million. There are some strong parts of that. There are some drawbacks. More than 50% of the jobs were just in restaurants. So we definitely need to spread that out besides just a small number of sectors. But that was completely fabricated, that the Obama people, when the bottom fell out, then said it's a Trump economy, and now they want to go back to saying it's Obama economy. Whoever said that?
Well, you guys were chiming in when the stock market was 29,000 plus, and things are going great. Oh, it's just that every time. Look, come on, Austin. I've been on TV for the better part of 20 years. You go on these shows and they, oh no, it's still the Obama economy. He started the recovery that I guess Bush was caused in the 2000s. Obama turned it around, and it spilled into Trump, and Trump was taking credit for Obama's economy until the bottom fell out. Then all of a sudden it was like, boy, I haven't heard of anyone saying this is the Obama economy for the past 5 months, Austin. My question is, going forward now, are it's Obama's economy still stupid? Are they going to start coming out of the woodwork? Final thoughts.
Well, A, don't call me stupid. But B, do you want to place a bet, Eric, of whether Donald Trump will be the first president on record to close with fewer jobs in the economy than were there when he took office? Because I think he's on path to be the first job destroyer as president.
Yes. A bet has been made. We will consummate that bet.
Okay, the bet is the loser.
Yeah, the bet is when he leaves office. So
shaves their head.
I might get 5. I might get 4.5. No. Shaving this is
the
real.
The loser shaves their head.
No. That's safe for you, my friend. That's an unfair bet for you. I love you, Austin. Thank you. Appreciate your time. Austan Goolsbee, everybody. See you in 2024. Find out who won that bet. There has been a lot of talk now of defunding police departments. Let's bring in political commentator Amisha Cross and former Deputy Assistant to President Trump, host of America First on Salem Radio, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. I'm going to set this up a little bit. It's very, very generic to this discussion. Amisha, I called you a couple days ago just to check in on you. We had a little discussion going, and I found out something very interesting. Your father, a Chicago narcotics cop, wow, I got to think he's right in the middle of this. He sees both sides of this. How's he feeling? How's he reacting to all of this?
He is reacting very strongly. On the one hand, he understands the role of the police. He is a 30-year veteran of the police department. He also leads a narcotics unit. On the other, he also is someone who has very strong opinions about some of the violence that he's seen escalate during this entire process.
Sebastian, and defund the police department. I put up a tweet that said defend the police department. It's such a slippery slope when you say defund the police. What do you understand that to mean?
Well, I think it's very clear if you look at the debates for the Democrat nominee for president, you had multiple people say that we have to defund ICE, which is law enforcement. We have to get rid of DHS. This is a fake shell game. The idea that they say defund, dismantle the police, and then we say, oh, no, we don't mean that. We want money for libraries or basketball courts. It's a lie. These people want anarchy, and these are the people on the streets who are burning down churches and businesses that belong to everyone of all skin colors in America. So this is an indicator of just how radical the Democrat Party has become.
And Amisha, is it the Black Lives Matter people who are looking to quote unquote defund the police, or explain it a little bit? We've had varying opinions on what actually defunding the police does mean. Tell us what. Now, I'm not talking about the Antifa. I'm not talking about the anarchists. I'm not talking about the ones who are trying to rip America apart from our DNA, from our seams. I'm talking about Black Lives Matter saying, what does defund the police mean?
Defund the police simply means reallocation of funding. If we look at the bloated police budgets that exist today and have been in existence for the past 30 years, we're seeing that, for example, in LA and Chicago, we're seeing upwards of $6 million plus being used towards the police department for things that police generally aren't even expected to do. In many cases, it's related to mental health services and calls for mental health. A lot of it is school policing. A lot of it is also basically utilizing them as a social service wing. And that's not necessary. We need more mental health clinics. We need more advisors in schools. We need more therapists in schools. We need more counselors. What we could use a lot of the money for, and we're talking not completely dismantling police budgets, but if you were to reduce it by at least 4%, you would have major changes in a lot of the arenas that are necessary.
You know, I just have to ask you, but the word is defund. You know, it's not let's find more funds for some of the other services that actually a lot of these communities deserve and need, have long not had and should have now. It's defunding, and I think for people who are looking from the outside, America, who's watching this play out on television, we're seeing a lot of businesses being destroyed. We're seeing a lot of violence happen to innocent people, and the thought of defunding, rather than increasing funding for some of the other areas, scares them.
There's a PR issue around the hashtag defund the police, and I think that is well noted. The problematic thing here is that everyone acts as though this is new. Defund the police, in its intent around reducing police bloat, making sure that you're allocating money to other necessary resources, is something that communities of color have argued for the past 35 years because these policing entities got a lot of funding from city taxpayers since the rise of the war on drugs. And we, quite frankly, just have not seen the fruits of the labor of being able to fund them at those levels at the behest of certain other well-intentioned and well-needed resources for the community.
All right, we're going to give Sebastian your final thought.
Well, you just heard a lot of deflection. This isn't about money. That's a red herring. Let's talk about the 18 people who were murdered. 18 murdered on Saturday in Chicago. Chicago doesn't need more money. Chicago needs to have responsible leaders. It needs to vote Republicans in. The irony of the last 16 days is we're seeing Democrat voters torch cities run by Democrats. The only way to stop the violence is to elect GOP candidates in November and re-elect the President of the United States to a second term. Then we will have law and order.
All right, we're going to leave it right there. Sebastian Gorka, thank you very much. Amisha Cross, thank you. And by the way, thank your father from me personally. Appreciate you, Amisha.
Thank you.
Coming up next, she's defending General Michael Flynn, what attorney Sidney Powell says the judge in the case is doing wrong, and why her client is innocent. As you know by now, you have a voice on this show and with me. Each week, hundreds of calls flood into my toll-free number, 888-601-0032. Last week, you were very fired up about the protests. Thousands called, many very upset.
Well, President Trump wanted to build a wall, and now he built a wall right around the White House, his own place.
I see your program, and I'm so thankful that you show both sides of a question. You call out people who say wrong things and tell them why it's wrong. Or if they misstate the truth, you call that out.
I listen to every single call, every one of them. I play a few here so the whole country can hear your thoughts. And that's what it's all about. Your voice, your thoughts. Again, the number is 888-601-0032. It's toll free, or ericbolling.com. Also free all the time.
United we stand, we never fall. This perilous fight, it takes one and all. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand, America. United we stand. We stand, America. United we stand. Ready to help, ready to serve. It takes everyone with steady nerves. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand, America. United we stand. We stand, American strong. City by city, state by state, town by town, stand American great. Everyone
Sidney Powell joining me now is a former federal prosecutor and attorney currently for Michael Flynn. Thank you for joining us, attorney. In a couple of days, there's going to be some oral arguments that were demanded, I understand. What is the case that you're going to make to the court regarding General Flynn?
Well, it's really very simple. The government moved to dismiss the case against him because they don't have a case. They realized when they discovered all the actual evidence that the government's been hiding for some time now, the FBI in particular, that General Flynn is completely innocent. His statements, whatever he said to the FBI agents, were not material at all to their investigation because they weren't supposed to be investigating anything. He had been perfectly honest with them, as the agents reported back to multiple high-level people in the FBI and the DOJ after the interview, and they're not going to prosecute it. They're dropping the charges. Well, Judge Emmett Sullivan, the district judge, instead of granting the motion to dismiss, to which we consented, and of course we'd moved for that ourselves in multiple motions because of the facts that were coming to light, the truth that was coming to light, and we had moved to withdraw his guilty plea for a number of reasons, not the least of which was his counsel throughout the proceedings had been conflicted by a non-consentable conflict of interest, so they had to withdraw instead of continue to represent him. But Judge Sullivan decided to go off on his own and appoint a friend of the court, somebody who had written an op-ed in the New York Times or the Washington Post advocating just exactly proceeding with the case on his own. And judges can't do that. Yep. There are two constitutional principles at issue. One is separation of powers, that only the government, only the Department of Justice can prosecute anyone. And the second one is there has to be a case or controversy under Article 3 for a judge to proceed to do anything. And once both parties agree, there isn't one.
Allow me to jump in here because I want to ask you a couple quick questions. Now, I think it's atrocious what's happened to General Flynn and what's happened to Roger Stone as well. There are so many people in D.C. and in former administrations in the deep state who've lied, and they're just walking around freely. Meanwhile, Flynn had to plead guilty, and Stone is going to jail allegedly. My question here is there are those who say, but he actually did lie, and that can be seen as a crime. What do you say to them?
He was honest with the agents. The agents told the DOJ and FBI that he was honest with them. We found the evidence that shows that the agents made up these purported false statements. They altered the 302 to put in it things he did not say, and they also put in things that they didn't put in things that he did say. And now that we have the transcripts of his conversations with Kislyak, it's even more clear. There are some indications in the notes of things he told them about the conversation that were true that they did not put in their ultimate report on which they based the purported false.
It's unbelievable. It should scare the hell or the daylights out of every single American watching right now. If they can do this to a general, someone who risked his life for this country, they can do it to any single American they want. They can play around with these. What has happened?
Exactly.
But I want to just take it, when it goes to the children, when it goes to the family, tell us and tell our audience what the FBI did or what the court did to bring in General Flynn's son to maybe make him, I don't know, do things he might not have done had they not done that. It's almost like, behind closed doors with a white light in a Russian room somewhere, what they did to him.
Oh, yes. The FBI and special counsel lawyers threatened to indict his son, Michael, who had simply performed administrative duties for his company. And by the way, they had registered the company timely under the Lobbying Disclosure Act. There were no Foreign Agent Registration Act violations either. They made up those purported false statements. It's appalling from one end to the other, Eric. And what's really bad is they hid all this for 3 years.
Sidney, if you can still hear me, how is he doing personally?
He's doing very well since I came in the case. There's been a dramatic difference. People say they can see a spring in his step again. And of course, there have been some horrible twists and turns, particularly this action by Judge Sullivan in the last couple of weeks. But I am confident we will get this fixed, whether it has to go to the Supreme Court or not. I know what the law is, and Judge Sullivan violated it. There's no way the Court of Appeals can let that stand. And the Solicitor General himself.
How is he emotionally, though? Is he emotional? Is he okay? Because I got to think he's pretty angry the way he was treated. Does he wish? You know, what's his emotions?
I think he's in a good place. I mean, he's mad as hell, of course, about the whole system and how broken it is that this could happen to him or anyone. I mean, he views himself as just somebody who's, you know, got to make the truth known and is being used as an example here in more ways than one. But I think he's in a good place mentally.
You know, I'm going to leave it here because we're running out of time. But I think we need to bring you back. I'd love to get you back, and maybe after these oral arguments that come to light in a couple of days, just bring you back. And I'd like to hear what the court, how you're treated. I not only should be exonerated, he should be held up as a hero. General Flynn, you're doing a great job. Sidney Powell, I understand, and they tell me this book is great. I haven't read it, but they say it's great. License to Lie, you wrote that book. Sidney Powell will pick up that book as well. Thank you for your time. Shortly after that interview, the judge Powell mentioned that was appointed to review the DOJ's motion to dismiss charges against Flynn came out with a new filing. He said the Justice Department's push to dismiss the case was a, quote, abuse of power to benefit a political ally of the president. It will still be up to the original judge, Judge Emmett Sullivan, and potentially an appeals court to decide whether to drop the case or not. And we're going to be following this very closely. Several former defense officials are speaking out against President Trump following the nationwide protests and riots. Next, retired Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaffer gives us his perspective. And if you don't want to miss this or any of our interviews, be sure to set your DVRs and record the show.
America, one nation, from Florida to St. Louis to Seattle. America This Week, America's fastest growing political show, delivers facts, not falsehoods.
Well, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I appreciate the opportunity to clear some of it up.
Hard-edged opinions.
We can no longer rely on China to be the primary producer of so many critical products that we need at a time of crisis.
Tough topic debates.
Has the mainstream media vetted Joe Biden the way they vetted others on the right?
I just believe that all women have the right to speak their truth and that those truths should also be investigated. The end, regardless of what political party they are a part of.
America This Week reveals the topics and issues that pulse throughout America. Fighting COVID-19.
We're working with every single state to be able to detect outbreaks before they spread into the community.
And the path forward.
Getting back to some degree of normality, that will come. We will get over this.
America This Week investigates chaos at the southern border.
Go, 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 go.
The poisoning of America.
It's in the soils, it's in the water, and it's in our blood.
Toxic chemicals linked to multiple cancers found in towns across America.
We were poisoned, and we are still poisoned.
Almost every day, there is a new community that is finding out that their water is contaminated.
America This Week relentlessly seeks the truth on your behalf.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America This Week.
United we stand, we never fall. This perilous fight, it takes one and all. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand America. United we stand. We stand America. United we stand.
Retired Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaffer is an intelligence expert and president of the London Center for Policy Research. Colonel Schaffer, thanks for being here. So I want to get right into the story. We'll start wide right now. The generals, there seems to be a back and forth going between, Mattis and Kelly, former Secretary of Defense and former Chief of Staff to President Trump and the presidency. Give us a sense on what's going on here.
Well, I have observed, like you, some of these comments which seem to be completely based on emotion, not on fact. As a matter of fact, General Mattis ignores the use of certain laws throughout history to bring peace to riots. And General Kelly himself, Eric, this has been overlooked. General Kelly himself was in charge of the U.S. Marine Corps component that went into L.A. in 1992 to quell the riots there. So their comments are out of sync with what I think is obvious to what we all know, that they have direct knowledge of what has been done in the past, yet they are speaking politically. And let me say something that may upset General Mattis and General Kelly. General Zinni, Tony Zinni, one of my mentors and friends, once said, general officers should not act politically. They should offer factual advice to all who seek it and never seek to become political. And I think both of those generals have violated that Zinni directive.
Yeah, so there are two issues here, Colonel, and one is whether or not we should use military force to secure the streets of America. You know, Tom Cotton would say yes. General Mattis would say no. That's one of the issues. You can weigh in on that. But more importantly for me, I mean, that's something that people probably generally made up their own minds. More importantly for me, should the commander-in-chief, the president, be worried about his backside, his six, with his own military generals and people that work for him?
More generals have not spoken out against the president than those who have spoken out against the president. And let me answer that part first. I believe General Mattis is bitter. No matter what he says about what happened between he and the president, General Mattis was fired. There were 5 policy disputes that I'm directly aware of that resulted in General Mattis being let go. So, and by the way, I know Jim Mattis. It's not like he's someone who I don't know personally. Jim actually worked on a project at the London Center with us right before he became SecDef. So again, I'm speaking from direct knowledge. Secondly, relating to the president's ability and interest of having people not come after him after the fact, it's really sad. The president will have the ability to pick and choose people who he feels serves his policies best. General Mattis did not do that. So it's really sad he's speaking out against the president. Back to the issue of the law of using the military. The president has the right, like there's been 12 other presidents who have used the legal authorities they have to bring in the military 19 different times since Thomas Jefferson. So these laws that permit the president to bring in the military is something that has been, I don't want to say commonly used, but efficiently and effectively used to put down rebellions. And again, I go back to John Kelly. Marine Corps moving into Los Angeles in 1992 did have a positive effect on stopping those riots.
Right. Colonel, we're going to leave it there. I just want to, I'd like to point out, we all want to thank the generals for their military service for the freedoms of this country. My concern, I don't want to get people to get this wrong. We absolutely respect the military. My concern is that throughout history, the generals, the military, has kept a silent policy about what they felt about the seated president, no matter what party they come from or what party the president was in. So we're going to leave it right there. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaffer, again, appreciate your time, sir, and your service.
Always. Thank you, Eric. Thank you all.
Every week we honor first responders who died in the line of duty protecting our great country. If you haven't learned this man's name yet, you should. Retired St. Louis Police Captain David Dorn was shot and killed while trying to protect his friend's pawn shop from looters during a riot. Captain Dorn served nearly 40 years with St. Louis PD, and after he retired in 2007, he became the police chief for the small town of Moline Acres in Missouri. Our deepest condolences to your family and friends and the brothers and sisters in blue. Rest in peace, Captain Dorn.
United we stand, we never never fall. This perilous fight, it takes one and all. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand, America. United we stand. We stand, America. United we stand. Ready to help, ready to serve. It takes everyone with steady nerves. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand, America. United we stand. We stand, American strong. City by city, state by state, town by town, stand American great. Everyone stands American strong. When strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand America. United we stand. We stand America. United we stand.
America This Week, America's fastest growing political show, points out how rough and tumble politics shape opinion in every region in our country. We tell American stories, stories that touch our people, determine our politics, focus on the future of America.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America this week. Thanks for joining us for another incredible episode of America This Week. I'm still hoping to get back to the swamp soon, kinda. Make sure you never miss a minute of America This Week. Be sure to set your DVRs and record us. You can find out when and where we air by going to facebook.com/America Bolling, all one word. We have a complete list at the top of the page, city by city. Now stay safe and see you next week. Good night, everybody.
America This Week, America's fastest growing political show, points out how rough and tumble politics shape opinion in every region in our country. We tell American stories, stories that touch our people, determine our politics, focus on the future of America.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America this week. Thanks for joining us for another incredible episode of America This Week. I'm still hoping to get back to the swamp soon, kinda. Make sure you never miss a minute of America This Week. Be sure to set your DVRs and record us. You can find out when and where we air by going to facebook.com/America Bolling, all one word. We have a complete list at the top of the page, city by city. Now stay safe and see you next week. Good night, everybody.